Well, I'm really looking forward to sitting down with my next guest, CEO, business leader, captain of industry in his own right, who I've come to know over the last few years as someone who is deeply patriotic when it comes to South Africa and solving for the crisis that we face in terms of economic growth, in terms of skills and jobs. And I'm always reminded of a Simon Sinek quote when I chat to him. When we tell people to do their jobs, we get workers. When we trust people to get the job done, we get leaders. And that's certainly the kind of leadership style that I've come to know from Vukani Mngxati, CEO of Accenture here in Africa. Vukani, a great pleasure to have you on Business Talk. And we're talking at this time of great upheaval. We don't need to cast our minds too far back to a period where we saw wide-scale looting, where people were really thinking, well, could South Africa get to this point where we seem to be on the precipice? Now, from a leadership perspective, your business leadership style really has been described as, I'd call it empathetic, strategic. How have you managed personally and professionally as a leader through this difficult time?
Well, thanks, Michael, for the invitation. And just once again, it's a pleasure talking to you. But, you know, the reality is that we need to up our level of leadership in the country substantially, both as captains of industry, as you put it, the government, civil society. We have got to rebuild trust with our stakeholders. What do I mean by this? I think one of the biggest issues that we have now is that our people don't trust leadership. Our people don't trust that we have their best interest at heart and that we want to do what's right for them. I think that they are also not interested or vested in helping the economy grow, because they themselves feel excluded from the economy. And it's the reason why it's easy to find people looting, because they're not vested in any way in actually maintaining the infrastructure and looking after those assets, because they don't feel that they own those assets. And as a result, think differently at a strategic leadership level. How do we create trust? How do we enable the majority of our people to feel connected with infrastructure, with business, with economic activities in the country? Otherwise, we're not going to see the problem that we saw in July. Also, part of the big issue is that people are hungry. People are sitting at home, unemployed. I mean, last week I spent some time in the township. You know, it's so disheartening to see youngsters in street corners, really languishing in hunger and having nothing to do. These are bright young people. They're hungry. They want to do something with their life. So what do they resort to? Doing wrong things. We've got to change that, and we've got to do so fast.
And to me, it speaks for, I mean, your point of vested interest is so important, because it speaks to providing hope. Where there is no hope, where there is hopelessness, people will go out and act and behave in the way that we saw, because there is no hope that tomorrow is going to be better. So you're not worried about consequence. You're lashing out at a system, to your earlier point, that has largely bypassed you. And we see it in vaccine hesitancy as well. There's lack of trust in leadership. I think it's a very astute point you made. You've said before, though, that South Africa needs to rethink the concept of leadership. What should the country's leaders be doing differently to rethink the whole concept of leadership?
So I think that in our country right now, we have, I almost want to be brave as saying we have a leadership crisis. They have the nation, the population of the nation, not trusting leadership. Number two, you've got people sitting at home, hungry, unemployed. Number three, we have policies in our country which I don't believe are in the interest of enabling the majority of the masses of our people to participate economically in a way that gives them hope and human dignity. And I think that if we as a nation do not rethink how we position ourselves differently in these constructs, we have a very big issue where our nation does not have hope, or if the population of the country does not have hope, the nation doesn't have hope.
On that point of providing hope, are you born a leader? Can you be taught? And I often think of the crucibles that some of the great leaders in our history, you think of Mandela and Tambo and others in the liberation movement, there was a crucible, a moment that really shaped and molded their leadership. And they've led very, very well through times of phenomenal crisis. It's not like this country hasn't been here before. How does one actually lead in the time of crisis? Is it something you're born with? Is it something you taught? What do you think?
I think leadership is taught. Of course, there will be a few innate capabilities that a leader would always have. But the majority of the traits that leaders develop is taught. And I really do believe that we have to teach leadership in our country. We have got to deliberately take a step back and ask, what sort of a leader are we looking for as a nation? What sort of people do we want? Let me give you an example. In my own growth of my leadership journey, I'm taught to refuse to be corrupt. And this is a trait that I now carry with me everywhere. And it absolutely feels amazing to know that I can sleep at night. So I think this is an important element, for instance, just to say that we need to be clear about what sort of leadership do we want as a country. And we need to train our people and teach our people and foster the values of leadership that we're looking for in our nation. And I take this point on corruption deliberately because I think this is one of the ills that we've got as a country that robs us of a future that this nation deserves, that all our people deserve. And we've got to take a stand against that and drive it across the board to make sure that we drive a clean economy and our people do the right things in order to advance the interest of our nation.
I think you've really touched on the core almost of what ails us as a country. It's a breakdown of trust. Without trust, you're not going to have economic growth. You're not going to have the public sector and the private sector being able to engage in a constructive way. And why is there that lack of trust? Well, at the root of it lies corruption and a lack of ethics, a lack of ethical leadership. And the Chief Justice referenced this a couple of years ago. And it all boils down to economic growth. I think it's the issue that's plagued the country for more than a decade. If we were growing at the rates that the NDP envisaged at over 5%, well, then you start absorbing more people in, you start providing them with hope of a better tomorrow. And a lot of the other issues, that noise dies down. How do we overcome this problem as we emerge from the pandemic of a lack of economic growth?
Well, I think that we have a few things that we've got to get right. The first thing is this private sector, public sector, civil society, and all factors of the economy has to come together to produce a plan that we all can sign up to and we can all drive towards. I think we have to continue fighting the scourge of corruption in our country across all levels so that we can actually, because corruption is one of the breakers of trust. Mm-hmm. Number three, we have to be action orientated, Michael. One of the things that I lament on a lot is that we are good at building good policies, but we are poor at executing. We haven't got a choice now. We've got to make clear policies. In fact, we don't need to make policies because we have so many of them and it's all good policies mostly. We've got to dust them off the drawers where they are and actually make sure that they are executed and they are delivered upon. And this is the only way we're going to create economic growth in our country. The one last thing that I think we need to focus on is how are we going to get our labor force to be contributing meaningfully in our economy. We have so many people, good folks in our nation. To have an extended 44% unemployment rate in the country is a crisis, and we have to solve for that crisis.
I mean, You mentioned something that I think is often overlooked, the back to basics approach. Chatting to Stefan Lamprecht around these SA Startup Act to say, how do we get the latent potential in our startups, high growth companies going again? Well, you've got a Ferrari driving down the road at 60 k's an hour because there are potholes all over the place. We can't get the basics right, and you actually start unleashing the innate potential in the private sector. Yeah, we've got all the policies in the world, to your point, but it's getting those basics right that seems to be something of a challenge here. Now, if we look at the fact that many businesses would have just settled back into this new normal, we're emerging from the pandemic, 18, 19 months Absolutely. Now, going back into level one. The world that we live in is still vastly different from the one pre-COVID. There's a pre and post-COVID marker. What can businesses do to get a head start for what will be a very accelerated 2022?
Well, I think first, let's look at the economy. I think we have a significant role that large businesses can play in the economy to fast-track growth. But most importantly, we have got to galvanize our SMME businesses to strive in this economy. And one of the things that we have seen is that if you've got a stronger small, medium enterprises in the country, the impact of the SMMEs in the economy is significant. And this is the reason why I'm part, for example, of Endeavour SA, which is an institution that fosters growth of small, medium enterprises in the country. Because I believe that this is the only way in which we can significantly scale up our economy. Now, you ask what should most companies look into? I think that everything is going digital. And every CEO, every executive in the company who is not thinking about how to harness the power of digital transformation in their businesses is missing the mark. We have a significant opportunity to innovate in the spaces where we operate, to bring the power of digital, because you talk about post-COVID. I don't think we're going to have a post-COVID. I think we're going to have a new normal, which involves significantly a different work-life environment. I don't think that you and me are going to go back into the office on a full-time basis. I think it's likely that you're going to have a hybrid work environment. I think we're going to continue investing more of our time consuming goods and services online, as opposed to driving into the next grocery store to buy your own goods. And I think this power of digital transformation is what every industry needs to focus in on to push for growth in their own respective spaces.
Massive opportunities, and I've never had a better work-life balance. And I know I keep on joking about we're living at work, we're not working from home, but I do see my two young daughters more than I've ever seen them, and this flexibility allows me to do that. The issue for a business, I think, is, right, I understand the future is digital, I can see the trends, I don't have the skills. And I think skills are a big issue in the country at the moment. So what skills should companies be investing in right now to ensure that they can take advantage of those opportunities in the future?
Look, you're right. You're right, Michael. The issue is significant, and I think it's just going to get worse, especially digital transformation skills, because everyone requires these skills. I mean, I look at the companies that we support in Endeavour, for instance, who are digital by nature. Okay, these companies are growing 80% year on year. Why? Because the demand for technology skills has become significant in terms of the economy that we now live in. Okay, so what does that tell us? It's very clear that we as a nation have got no choice but to scale up our build of digital transformation skills. Here I'm talking about cloud-based skills. I'm talking about data science skills. I'm talking about analytics capabilities, because these are the skills that we require as foundational elements to enable business growth. Cybersecurity is another significant area where, as we transition to digital world, the cyber attacks are getting even more intense. But it therefore means that we require to build the skills at a significantly higher pace. So this is why I am, and the rest of the group I'm working with, focusing on how we can scale up the growth of digital skills in this country. There is no reason why we cannot have the same level of capacity in terms of skills as what India has. Well, albeit in small quantities, because they've got a much larger population than us. But when you look at the type of people that we have in the country, there is no reason why we cannot educate them and skill them up in the skills of the future that we know we require. I mean, we have so many programs in the country that have proven that this is possible, but we have not created scale. Why? Because everyone is trying to solve in their own little corner. So what we've got to do, in my view, is to come together, create a strategy and a vision for the nation, which is supported by all players in the economy, and then create scale of these digital skills across the nation. Because we know that if we get this right, we have a significant opportunity to perform at the level at which all global players are performing. We probably won't be able to compete with China or India because we are a few years behind. But starting now to build these skills is only going to put our country in good stead. We have everything going for us. We probably are the economy in Africa with the best infrastructure. We have, you talk about telecommunications capabilities, we probably have the best. You talk about infrastructure from the roads, network, people, we have all that it takes. What do we need? We need imagination. We need future strategies, and we need action to make it happen.
Which brings us all back to leadership and why it's been so encouraging to see the likes of yourself and a few others. I think Peter de Villiers here of Clickatel really stepping up at this time to say, we can't really wait for anyone else here. You have to start leading and hopefully bring government into the fold through your actions. Because if we just sit around and say, well, it's someone else's problem, someone else is going to take the lead, nothing will ever happen. Just as a concluding thought, Vukani, what are you actually hoping to see more of from businesses as we come out of this pandemic? And I'm thinking here particularly of big business. We've just spoken about how small business really has to be the engine of growth in South Africa. That's a two-way street. Surely we need to see big business contracting a little bit more with our local enterprise and supporting them a little bit more. What would you like to see more from business as we exit?
Look, I think big business in this country needs to be part of the solution. Bickering in the corner and complaining about what's going on isn't going to help us, which is why, I and other leaders in the economy are standing up and saying, actually, we have a role to play in this economy. It's up to us to help this economy be successful. We have got to have a strategic view and not suffer from the me, myself, and I syndrome. The second one, as you rightfully say, country, because they are the generator of employment at a massive, even a bigger scale than ours. Now, government is doing a lot, as you are aware, in supporting small to medium enterprises. But I think big business can actually contribute even more in creating sustainability of those operations by supporting them in earnest and not just paying lip service, to the support. We have got to build these businesses. And then lastly, Michael, I think we have to up our level of leadership. As business leaders, of large or medium-sized businesses, we've got to scale up how we think and how can we actually be an answer to South Africa's problems. Many a time, businesses want to shrug their shoulders and say, what can we do? I don't think that that's helpful. We've got the opportunity to put up our hands and say, hey, we think we can do something that's different. We think we can provide assistance and help in terms of just capacity to think. And then the very last point is that we've got to roll up our sleeves. You know, time to talk and think Pretoria will provide is up. We now have the need bigger than ever to be the ones that up our sleeves and get on with the program and help South Africa become what we want.
I certainly couldn't have said it better myself. Exceptional circumstances definitely call for a more radically driven leadership style to overcome these challenges, many challenges, but within that, as you say, a great opportunity for the country as well. Vukani Mngxati, CEO of Accenture in Africa, here on Business Talk on Business Tech. Thanks for your time.